music, like a lot of genres get sampled, of course, but amongst all of those, there's one that gets sampled the most. Like, it has to be soul. With its complex melodies and harmonies and progressions, it's not hard to see why it's been used for so long. But for this reason, it can be one of the most intimidating. I know for me, earlier on, it was quite intimidating, but I'm here to show you today that it's actually not as hard as it seems. Alright, let's break down the sample. So I started off with the infamous Wingman upright. I really tried to make it sound like it was played in person, you know, varying the velocities, should always vary your velocities, and make sure that your piano isn't hitting on the grid exactly, because that will sound very computerized. In terms of the melody, I didn't want to do too much of it. For the effects, I added the sheps just to adjust some of the frequencies before it got compressed. I added the CLA2A, then I only cut off some of the lows. I then found these pads on Analog Labs. So as you can see, it's very simple. These are all triads. I just transposed some of the notes on this one a bit, but it's a triad. So for the effects, I added a shaper box just to give it a slight pulsing vibe and also give it a bit more of a slow attack. I then used the flanges. I used the Valhalla reverb. I wanted it to have a lot of decay. The next sound was the ample guitar semi-hollow. What I did is that I played a lot of random ear candies with my keyboard and I recorded it on Edison. By slicing them, fading them, layering them, I was able to come up with something pretty nice. I also added this accent from Ain Sounds just to accompany the guitars. An important point with this stage, not just this stage actually, all the stages, is that rather than focusing on the rigid stuff like the tempo and if it's, you know, on time and if that note is there and, you know, make sure it sounds right. That's called feel. Make sure it feels right. That's the most important thing. With this electric guitar, I'm able to get away with a lot of these notes being pretty much off time just because I made it feel right. That's a word that live musicians use a lot, the feel. For the effects, I added the reverb, I added the sheps, I added the CLA2A, I added the delay brigade. I love this delay. Shout out Keon, he put me on this. I used another reverb just to give it a lot more decay. The first one was to make it sound like it was in a room kind of. This one was just to give it way more decay. And of course I cut off some of the highs and the lows. The next sound was this phrase that I chopped up from the app. This was the phrase to begin with. Then by running it through Melodyne and chopping it up, I was able to come up with this. For the effects, I just used this curve. The next sound I used was this trumpet from Session Horns. I just used this trumpet just to reinforce that catchy melody. For the effects, I added the CLA2A. I added the low-he just to give it some like character, and I cut off some of the highs and the lows. The next sound I used was of course, mono bass. I used the 60s P bass. So at this point here, if you couldn't tell, I'm trying to create like a call and response. So in certain parts, I'm reinforcing the whole melody by playing it with multiple instruments, and then I'm adding extra notes in between. So the next sound were the vocals, and I recorded these in myself. So I already explained this in my videos before, but this is what I record into FL with. So with an auto-tune, with a compressor, a de-esser, this is what the vocals sound like. I've been waiting, So I added a CLA 2A just to control the peaks a bit. I added a shaper box just to give it a pulsing vibe. For the shaper box, I only activated it on the second half. I used the lossy just to make it a bit more drowned out, a bit more underwater. I used the room reverb. I used the pancake just to pan it left and right. And I used this EQ curve just to control some of the frequencies. When you actually create your own vocals yourself, you have so much freedom, and you can really, if you do this, you know what I mean, you can really dictate how you want the melody to go. I personally think that makes up for not being a good singer if you're not a good singer. The fact that you have full control over what you want to hear. And I'm by no means an amazing singer. My voice. But with the stuff we have in 2025, like auto-tune and melodynes and all of this stuff, I'm still able to make something that sounds pretty good. And another point is that you need to actually try. Don't just say you're garbage and just, I'm not gonna try or whatever. Like, try a bit, otherwise it's gonna sound garbage anyway. So then at this point, I needed some percussion elements. I didn't want anything heavy, so I just used these like soft drums to like hit every now and then throughout the sample. By doing that, it gives the sample just enough rhythm without bleeding into the melody too much. For the effects, I added a sound shifter just to pitch it down a bit. I added a CLA 2A just to control the peaks. Shaper box, same thing. Pancake just to pan it left and right. I didn't like this frequency here, so I dipped it down a bit. Then I gave it some reverb just to help it sit in the mix better. I then layered them with these extra percussions. And I added them to the exact same chain as the drums before. So for some variation, I added a switch up, and all the same instruments are being used with the same effects, but just playing something slightly different. I will take you, I will take you. The only thing new that I added was this Multikey from Keon. As you can hear, it's just simply following the progression. I just wanted it to create some atmosphere in the back, and for this all I added was an EQ. So I started off with this Waves bus compressor to control some of the dynamics a bit. Then I used this VST called Retro Tape. Shout out Max Shooter, he put me on this one, and it's just like, it works just like any other vinyl effect, like a RC20 or like a Reels, but it has such a nice like character to it, and I feel like it's one of the most realistic ones. So all I did here was just make it warp a bit, and I gave it a little bit of noise, as you can see. Then I added a soft clipper just in case if anything went above 0. With all that being done, there's what the final sample sounds like. Alright guys, that wraps up this video. I hope you learned something new. Remember, this is just a demo. It's not a guide. It's not the right way to do it. You can do it however you want, but I'm just doing this so that you can pick out little things I'm doing and add them to your toolbook. And if you enjoyed this video, please, give it a like, give it a comment, share it with people, and yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. See you guys later.